The Charlie Rich Archive presents The Last Known Interview with Charlie Rich, 1994, courtesy of Jim Newcombe. A Night with the Silver Fox, Charlie Rich. Jim Newcombe was a man on a mission to meet Charlie Rich, and he got there eventually. Here he recalls his quest and unearths a 1994 interview from A Night with the Silver Fox.
Naturally, I wanted to ask about the early days and how he got started.
Well, I was farming in West Arkansas at the time, and I was married to Margaret Ann, same wife I've had all the time. And Bill Justis was doing some work over here for Sam Phillips, and we knew Bill through the Musicians Union. We'd been to Musicians Union parties, and Margaret Ann kept wanting me to bring a tape over to him, and I didn't think I had anything. She had an old Webco recorder, and somehow she brought the tape over to Bill, and he hired me for a couple of jobs, a few sessions and things like that. That's how we got started over there. I even played on some Jerry Lee Lewis stuff. Jerry wanted to cut something, but he didn't know if he could play the chords or something like that. So I played it. I've forgotten what the songs were.
I told Charlie that I thought Jerry Lee's "I'll Make It All Up to You" was one of his finest moments on Sun. So much feeling in this great ballad. Charlie replied,
"Yeah, I did too."
There was a story go around way back that Sam Phillips had given Charlie a bunch of Jerry Lee records and said, "Come back when you can play that bad." Obviously, Charlie had been around Sun before this was said, but he explained.
Bill Justis was the one that did that. Bill gave Margaret Ann some Jerry Lee records. She'd taken over some of my stuff, and it was pretty jazzy, I guess. I just got out of the Air Force, and we'd been playing jazz in the Air Force field band. So most of my stuff sounded a little jazzy. So Bill Justis gave Margaret Ann a couple of Jerry Lee records and said, "When he can play this bad, tell him to come and see me."
Sun was not an obvious choice of label for Charlie, as it had become the mecca for rockabilly and rock and roll artists. Charlie, however, explained to me that he had tried farming and tried to do gigs as well, and it wasn't working.
I knew there was one thing I wanted to do, and that was to play, sing, perform, or something like that. I didn't know exactly what it was going to be, but it had to be in music.
Having said that, then Sun made sense because Sam Phillips had this one big plus to his name. He would allow an artist to be himself, to let the music come out straight from their hearts. Sun was also a very good atmosphere to be creative in, and it was very loose, such as Charlie playing on a Jerry Lee cut.
You know, the kind of place it was, but it was kind of a little gathering sort of place with the cafe there next door. Everyone just fooled around there and tried out different things. So Jerry happened to be there, and I had a good song he liked. He only did that a couple of times, but it was interesting. I guess he just wanted to do his own version vocally, and he had me play piano. I guess it came out pretty good, and he kept that cut, but he learned it and he did it himself. That's the way I do it with Pig Robbins. Pig would play organ or piano on lots of my records, and I'd play whatever's left in there.
His big hit on Sun was Lonely Weekends. I asked if he had written it on a lonely weekend, and what kind of work on the road came from it.
I don't know if it was autobiographical or whatever. I think it was one of the first things that Bill and Sam liked that we did. What I was trying to do at the time was find something they would like, and primarily I was doing it to promote the song more so than myself. I liked doing studio work and writing songs and stuff like that, and not necessarily being in the limelight. But we did that and had some pretty good success with it. We did some of those New York TV things. We tried to do the Ed Sullivan Show, but we didn't get on there. I think they took a tap dancer or something in our place.
Lonely Weekends picked up some notable covers over the years. Jerry Lee did it on Mercury, LP and single. Waylon Jennings did an excellent version on his Just to Satisfy You album. The Everly Brothers did it on Rock and Soul, and Wanda Jackson recorded it too. Writing songs was what he wanted to do. But it didn't always mean getting a cut on it. I found this out when I asked for more Sun memories.
I think if you mean if I have a cute prepared story, well, I don't. A lot of people ask me if I wrote sitting and thinking in jail, and during that time, I probably had been in jail a few times. I may have thought about it, but I don't remember that's where I wrote it. One time we were living in Benton, Arkansas, which is about 150 miles from here, and Sam had the idea maybe we could cut Last Date, the Floyd Cramer thing, if we could get some real good words to it. So Margaret Ann and I sat down and worked on it. It was a pretty song, and we got what we thought was good enough, at least to start the ball rolling. So we drove over here, and Sam and them were having a party, and he said they wouldn't let us use it anyway, and laughed. That's how loose it was. Sam, I guess he's really lucky or smart or both. I think he had a lot to do with producing and mastering, but he also had other producers working for him at times. As a matter of fact, Billy Sherrill worked for him, Jack Clement, Bill Justis. A lot of people that went on to bigger and better things got their start with Sam. The fact that he'd give people like that and myself an opportunity, that's worth a lot to us. He's one of a kind, there's no doubt about that.
On Sun, Charlie wrote some songs for other artists like Carl Mann, Ray Smith, and Johnny Cash.
Bill Justis and myself wrote The Ways of a Woman in Love for Johnny Cash. He had about 3 songs left to record with Sun before he went to Columbia, and we got 2 of the 3. Of course, Johnny has cut some of our stuff since then, some of my wife and I's stuff.
Charlie had rubbed shoulders with the Sun greats Johnny Cash, Jerry Lee, and Elvis. So I asked about those days.
When I saw Johnny Cash, he had already had 2 or 3 hits, and Elvis had already gone to RCA. I knew Roy Orbison. Roy was a nice, quiet old guy from Texas, and he wrote Ooby Dooby, and that's the first time I met him at the old Sun Studios. I knew Jerry Lee and all the remaining guys at Sun, like Ray Smith. I knew Warren Smith too, and Carl Mann. He put out a thing that Conway Twitty came out with later, Mona Lisa. I saw him for the first time in 25 years, 30 maybe, at a show we did in Jackson, Tennessee. He looked like he always did, and I was glad to see him. I haven't seen Stan Kessler in a while, but I've seen Roland Janes and some of the other musicians. We were all friends, guys just hanging out and making music together. I like Jerry, and I think he's stylish. Aren't we all? The guy's worked hard all his life in the music business, and I know, because I've tried to keep up with him on the road some, and for him to kind of end up with all the problems and stuff, it just isn't fair. Jerry Lee should certainly be Entertainer of the Year and should be in the Country Hall of Fame because he's been consistent. I think he's a good entertainer. I always have.
He had this to say about Sun Studios.
It was so loose. I guess that was why it was so attractive. No clock was ticking, no union regulations or anything like that. It would be open for 24 hours a day, or it could be closed for 2 days.